Hey guys,
Hi everybody.
welcome to another weekly Travel Therapy Mentor video, live video. Normally these are on Sunday evenings, but tonight we're coming to you Monday because yesterday we had a really busy day in Rome, our last stop on the trip, and tonight's actually our last night in Europe. We're flying back in the morning to the US, so we've been out of the country for 4 months now. We're going to talk a little bit about our trip and about how we've been able to take so much time off, and just some ways that we were able to afford to take a long trip like this. Things like credit card rewards and living frugally, trying to keep our trip costs lower. All those things have been very helpful. But we're going to go through some of that. And Whitney will introduce us, and I'm going to share this video in a couple groups, and then we'll get into talking about it.
Hey guys, sorry we are coming to you a little bit later than anticipated tonight. We'll get into talking about a little bit of why, just different things that happen while we're traveling. Like Jared said, we are coming at you live from Rome, which is our last stop on our 15-week trip, 15 and a half weeks, I think, around Europe. So we have actually been gone since May, and we'll be heading back tomorrow to the US. So we wanted to touch base, like Jared said, about just kind of a recap of our trip and some ways that we were able to make this possible. And most of all, what a lot of you are probably wondering is how can you also make it happen? You know, as a travel therapist, in what ways are you able to use the flexibility of travel therapy to take additional time off and be able to do whatever you want? Go home and see family, travel for leisure, that sort of thing. So we'll just do some introductions here, and like Jared said, he'll share the video in a couple groups so that more people can join on with us live. So my name is Whitney Aiken.
And I'm Jared Kazaza.
And we are the faces behind the Fifth Wheel Physical Therapist blog, as well as Travel Therapy Mentor, where we have a website as well as a Facebook page and an Instagram. So most of you guys that are watching probably already know who we are and hopefully have tuned into some of our videos in the past. If you are watching for the very first time, like Jared said, we try to do these Facebook Live videos on various topics every week. We try to usually do it on Sunday night, but when we're traveling around the world, in this case, or sometimes around the US for work, it doesn't always work out on Sundays. So this week we're doing it on Monday. So if you guys are tuning in live, we would love if you would comment and say hello in the comments.
Also, how's the video quality and stuff? Because the Wi-Fi here at the Holiday Inn is not great.
Yeah, well, we'll get into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Hi Andrew, thank you so much for tuning in with us live. And if anybody's watching this later and you're not with us live, if you're watching on the replay later after Monday evening, we'd love if you'd say hi as well and let us know that you watched. So a bit about today and why we pushed the video back a day and then also pushed it back about an hour. Sometimes traveling is crazy. Yesterday was so busy. We were in Rome, and what did we do yesterday? We went to the I can't remember. Today we went to the Vatican, and yesterday
We went to the Colosseum and the Forum.
No, that was 2 days ago.
2 days ago.
I'm drawing a totally. Oh, we went out. Yesterday we stayed at an amazing 5-star hotel, which we're going to talk about a little bit, how we're able to stay at amazing 5-star hotels sometimes. So we were at a 5-star hotel last night, and we wanted to enjoy the hotel. We went to the pool, and then after that we went out in the evening, because one thing we heard about in Rome is just to walk around in the evening. They actually have a word for it. I can't remember what the word for it is, but it means to like stroll in the evening, more or less. So we were out last night strolling.
Because it is really hot in Rome right now, so
yeah.
being out in the evening is a lot nicer.
It was beautiful last night. We saw the Trevi Fountain, and we saw the Spanish Steps, and we did like an audio guided tour of some beautiful parts of the downtown. So that's why we didn't do it last night. So we thought tonight would be a great night to do it because we're tired anyway. We weren't planning on staying out late. We have to go to the airport in the morning. So we thought this will be perfect. We left the 5-star hotel and came to the Holiday Inn, which is a little closer to the airport, for the evening. But the public transportation system is horrendous in Rome.
If you guys come to Rome, pretty much you have to rent a car, because Uber, the only option they have is Uber Black, which is very expensive. So the cheapest Uber that we could find anywhere that we wanted to go, even if it's just a few miles, is like $40. So not worth it. The buses, we took, I guess, probably about 10 or 12 buses now, and every single one has been 20 minutes to 30 minutes late. everyone.
Awful.
So and yesterday it was 40 minutes late. So if you have to connect to 2 buses, you might as well give up.
You're screwed. So today it originally said to go from Hotel A to Hotel B that it would take an hour, and we were like, gosh, an hour is a long time. Like in the same city, like within the city limits, not on the outskirts.
Within like a
city
5
limits.
mile, it's like 5 miles
It
apart.
would have been a 15-minute drive by car, but it said it was going to take an hour, and we thought, well, that kind of sucks, but whatever, an hour. It ended up taking over 2 hours for us to get to this place.
We could have walked faster than it took us to get here by 2 buses. It was
awful. So anyway, we're late and we're sorry, but we're here. So we were gonna kind of just recap our trip for you guys that may or may not know. I know we post here and there, but it might be hard to follow the timeline of what we do. So we're just gonna recap kind of our trip from beginning to end, and then we're gonna talk a little bit about travel hacking, which is the term that a lot of people use to just talk about how you're able to travel frugally, and how in the heck, as PTs, like many of you are, or maybe you're OTs or speech therapists or whatnot, how are we able to take off 4 months at a time to travel? So we want to talk about that.
Hey Alicia, thanks for joining. Hey Kiara, yeah, Rome, Florence, and Venice will be awesome. We didn't go to Florence, but Rome and Venice is
You're
amazing.
so cool. Kiara is going to school, she's an American, but she's going to school in England, so she is getting to take advantage of the cheap flights and the short little flights all around Europe. She told me she's going to Portugal here in like a month, and then also you're going to go to Italy in the next month. So cool. We
Don't
didn't do
rely on the buses in Rome. That's my best advice.
We didn't do any traveling like this when we were in grad school, as I'm sure the majority of you didn't either. It's impossible to travel while you're in grad school, pretty much. But anyhow.
All right, so our trip started in May, and the first stop was actually Madrid, but we were only there for a few days, so we went from Madrid to Portugal.
Before we get into the nitty gritty, we started in May, and now it's
almost September.
So we traveled from the middle of May to the end of August, so 15 and a half weeks total. 14 countries total on our itinerary.
And like 28 or 29 cities.
So many cities. So we traveled for roughly 3.5-4 months, all around Europe this time. It was only Europe, and it was about 14 countries, and we worked our way from west to east. So we'll just kind of go through which countries we hit and kind of like the order that we went in.
All right, so we started in Madrid. We were there for a few days, and then we spent 2 whole weeks in Portugal. So the reason we started in Madrid is just because we got easier reward flights to Madrid. It was cheaper in terms of points, so it was easy to start there. That's a major airport. So we started in Madrid, spent 2 weeks in Portugal, started in the north and headed down south. We stopped 4 different places in Portugal. Then we went back into Spain, southern Spain, and traveled across southern Spain and then up the coast, the east coast.
To Barcelona.
To Barcelona. So
and my mom joined us for 2 weeks. My mom had never been to Europe before. She flew to Spain and met us and traveled with us for 2 weeks in Spain.
Yep. So then Barcelona's in northeast Spain, and we flew from there to Paris because it would have been a really long drive. So mostly we were going by buses and trains, but every now and then, if it's absurdly long distance, we were taking planes. And for the most part in Europe, the flights are pretty cheap. So I think probably our most expensive flight between countries in Europe might have been like $60 or $70. So pretty cheap. Definitely nothing compared to getting from US to Europe or from Europe back to the US. So from there, Barcelona went to Paris. Paris, we took a bus to northeastern France, the Champagne region. And then from there we went to Luxembourg, which was an interesting, very, very small country. It was a really cool place. Luxembourg to Belgium, right? We went to 3 cities in Belgium, Bruges, Antwerp, and Brussels. And then from there we went to the Netherlands and went to
Den Haag
2 cities
and
in
Amsterdam.
And then where?
And then after that, we went to northern Germany. So last year on our other trip, which is a totally different story.
Kind of central Germany, right?
No, it's in northern Germany. It's really close to the top. Last year we hit Berlin and Munich. So this year we wanted to hit a different city in Germany. So the only place in Germany we went was Hamburg. We didn't like it, but that's another story. So from the Netherlands, we went to Hamburg, Germany, and then we went to
Krakow, Poland.
Yeah.
So if we hadn't have gone to Germany, one reason we did stop there in a new city is just because that is a long way from the Netherlands all the way to southern Poland. It's like I mean, by bus it would have been ridiculous. So we actually took a flight. I think we took a bus to get to Hamburg, and then we took a flight from Hamburg to
Krakow.
Krakow.
So after Krakow, oh gosh, I get Eastern Europe kind of all jumbled up. I think it was Krakow, and then was it Austria?
Yeah.
Or was it Prague?
I can't remember. Maybe
Okay,
Prague.
well, either way, I don't remember the order, but we went to Prague, which is in Czech Republic. We went to Vienna, which is in Austria. We went to Bratislava, which is in Slovakia. Did I skip any in there? Oh, Budapest.
Yeah, we were in Budapest.
Went to
for a day.
Budapest, Hungary, and then unfortunately we had to skip Slovenia. We thought we were going to go to Slovenia, but if anybody is planning on doing a long-term travel in Europe, we found out that there's something called I don't know if I'm saying this right, the Schengen area,
Schengen, I think.
and it's more or less like the EU. It's not exactly the same countries as the EU, but a lot of the same countries that are in the EU are also in this Schengen region. Now, as an American citizen, the visa, more or less, you can't stay for more than 90 days within a 6-month period. So 3 months within a 6-month period.
So planning our trip, we didn't realize we had Slovenia planned in there, and then we went back and we found that out and added it up, and we were going to be like 94 or 95 days in the Schengen area. And because of that, we basically took Slovenia out and put more time in Croatia, which is not part of that agreement. And it actually ended up being Croatia was amazing, so I'm really glad we did that. We really did hear awesome things about Slovenia, so we'll definitely go back there in the future, but Croatia was amazing. So
yeah. So it ended up working out. Again, so many people when we travel, they say, "Wow, did you go here? Did you go here? Oh, you missed out on here." And we know that, like, there's always going to be something that we missed, but we can go back later. For example, like, we had to cut Budapest down to 1 day.
And Budapest was an
Budapest
awesome
was
city.
amazing, and I wish we could have spent longer
It was
than
one of
1
my
day.
favorite cities that we went to. It was really
But
cool.
it just worked out that way. So we'll have to go back to Budapest. We skipped Slovenia altogether, so we'll have to go back there.
Didn't go to Switzerland, so we're definitely gonna go back there.
So then we spent 12 days in Croatia, which was just amazing. Croatia was awesome. And then our final country was Italy, which we originally were not going to go to Italy. We were going to leave Italy for a different trip with Greece, because we didn't go to Greece and some other areas around there. But what we're going to talk about next is talking about how we sort of structure our trip and how we choose where we're going to go. And one big part of it is how we can arrange the flights. And we use airline rewards for flights a lot. So we happened to find a really good flight using airline rewards out of Rome. So we decided, okay, we'll tack Rome on there. And as long as we're going to go to Rome, maybe we'll stop one other place. So we went to Venice as well. So we went to Venice and Rome.
Yeah, so our trips are usually, the main determining factor is dates. So when are we available to travel, basically? So the longer you can stay out of the country, especially in places like Europe, where traveling within Europe is very cheap, like we were talking about. Most of our buses were probably $15 or less for, like a 4 or 5 hour bus ride to a new city. So it's really cheap to travel around Europe once you're already there. So the longer you can stay, the more the costs getting there and back are negated, or even the points used to get there and back, you don't use as many points, right? So when we do these trips, we want to stay wherever we're going as long as possible, as long as we're able to. And so basically we had to stop right around the end of August because we're going to go to TravCon, which is in Vegas. So we're doing a road trip out there. So we had to be back right around this time. So we knew that. So we're looking for return flights around that date. When we were leaving, my brother graduated physical therapy assistant school in May. So that's how we basically determined our beginning endpoints. Is we went as long as we possibly could out of the country, and then we designed the trip to fit those dates.
Yeah.
And
so if it's your situation, for example, we're going to start talking about the logistics of how we planned it and how we're able to make it work. So you can start thinking in your head, okay, if I have a certain amount of time, you have your dates blocked off, but it's really good if you can be flexible about the actual date. So we knew we had roughly from mid-May to roughly mid to late August. So those were kind of our bookends, and then we start searching within that time.
yeah.
If as we're going along, if you guys have questions, I see a few more of you guys are joining in. If you want to say hi, I see Ryan's on, Chase, hey guys. If you're on and you want to say hi, if you have questions, feel free to ask in the comments. But we're going to do our best to just talk about how the logistics of planning out our trip, and how that works, and how you can implement that in your life as well.
Yep. So we talked about the dates. So we wanted to spread it out as long as we possibly could. Those were kind of our firm end dates. We left as soon as we could after the graduation. We got back pretty much last minute that we can before we leave for our road trip. We only have 3 days when we get back in the U.S. to get ready and go on this road trip. So that's where our book ends basically. And then from there we're looking at flights basically anywhere in Portugal or Spain. We knew we wanted to start in Western Europe, like as far west as possible. So I was looking in Portugal or Spain for where the best rewards flights would, the cheapest amount of points or the best dates and all those things. So I was looking in basically like 1 week span there and looking anywhere in those countries, and then found Madrid, and that was the date that I found was the best one we could find. So we flew into Madrid.
Probably it was like a Tuesday or a Wednesday or something.
Yeah,
which is usually the best day to fly.
Yeah, midweek is usually the best time to fly as far as either paid bookings or reward point bookings, because not as many people are doing that, obviously.
Yeah.
And then at the end, I wanted to have the end date, the end travel set before we started booking the middle. So I looked all through that last week of August to find the best day and then where we could fly out of, and that ended up being Rome, and tomorrow was the cheapest amount of points, and that's how we booked it. So then we had our beginning point Madrid, our end point Rome, and then we were just like, all right, so we've got 15 weeks or whatever, and what cities do we want to go to, what countries do we want to go to, and we planned it out that way.
Yeah.
And I think that is, if you're doing a really long trip, I think that's the best way to do it. Other people definitely do it other ways, and they just plan it as they go. And you can do it that way if you're very spontaneous and all that. But I know that we would be really anxious about not knowing where we're going, where we're coming back from. And in addition, it ends up being a lot more expensive when you do it spur of the moment. Because if you can book, the Rome flight, if we had waited, we probably wouldn't be able to book it with points because those fill up pretty quickly. So we need to do that in advance. And if you're booking with cash, then the price goes up the closer it gets to the date. So we really prefer to have most things planned out before we go, and it's a lot of work before you go, but it makes the trip usually a little more seamless, hopefully, and you're not floundering around trying to find somewhere to stay and where to go and things like that.
Yeah, I don't know how people do it, to be honest, because it actually takes a lot of time to sit there and plan. So if you're a lot of people do it this way, but especially backpackers, if you're in a city and you're already trying to think about, well, what am I going to do today in the city, and what am I going to do tomorrow in the city? If you're also having to sit for a few hours at night in your hotel room and plan out the bus for 2 days from now, or the Airbnb, or the hotel, or the whatever, which city am I going to go to next, and how am I going to get there? You're really wasting a lot of time while you're on the trip, trying to plan the next step, and then you're also really at the mercy of whatever price is available.
Yeah.
So even if you're somebody who's a true backpacker that's doing hostels and that sort of thing, hostels can get expensive, or they might fill up.
Especially in places we found this out. We luckily had already had our place booked, but we met these girls on this bus that we took from Split, which is in basically central Croatia on the coast, to Dubrovnik, which is in southern Croatia. And they were on the same bus as us, and they were American as well. And so we started talking, and turns out that they had no plan for when they got to Dubrovnik, and they said that the hostels were too expensive. They were $50 a night per person, and these were girls that were taking a break from junior year of college, so 21 years old, really young, and probably not much money. So they were like, oh, well, we're just gonna go find a tent to buy and sleep in a park somewhere. And so
they said this in passing. Jared had talked to them a little while earlier while I was doing something else, and then we saw them again when we were getting off the bus, and they said, all right, well, we're just going to go find a tent somewhere. We'll see you later. And I was like, that's funny, a tent. And Jared was like, no, they're serious. They're going to go find a tent and sleep on the beach. And I was like, we're in another country. You're going to go find a tent. You're going to spend the €100 on a tent, probably.
So anyway, hostels can be very expensive. Even you think of hostels being very cheap, but depending on where the city is, supply and demand, it can be expensive.
But not even just considering price, but just considering I just can't imagine getting on a bus somewhere and the uncertainty of not knowing where you're going to sleep that night. Like, maybe some people find that exciting, but me, no. I'd rather know where I'm going to sleep that night.
Yeah.
And already have it planned out. So anyway, that's why, a lot of people warned us or told us, like, leave some flexibility in your trip. Maybe you get to one city and you want to stay a couple extra days, or maybe you hear about this other great place. In our example, like Slovenia, we heard like, oh, Slovenia is so great, you should go there for a few days. Maybe you want to change your plans. And we're like, yeah, we kind of get that, but we kind of also like to have it planned. So It's worked out really well. We've done 2 long trips. If you guys don't know our story, we did a trip last year, sort of similar, for 5 months around a little bit of Europe and then mostly Southeast Asia. And then, of course, this year, the trip we're talking about right now, 15 weeks all through Europe. And we had it all booked out as far as the accommodations and the flights. And it worked out really well for us. So
we had that booked in February, pretty much completely, and we left in May. So only thing we didn't book was buses and trains between cities, because that can be, I don't know, it's time consuming to try to do all that before. So we left some of it to be done. I mean, it might take 30 minutes, but when you're booking transportation between 25 cities, that's a lot of time. So instead, we left that, and then it would probably be best to do that beforehand too, but we just didn't have time to do all that.
So I want to touch a little bit on just some more logistics of travel hacking. If someone is listening, if you guys are listening and you have no idea what this even means, a lot of what we've done to be able to accumulate points to then have points to use on flights, and then we're going to get into talking about hotel points as well. We've been doing what's called credit card churning for several years now. Jared is really the mastermind behind this. He's been doing a lot of reading and researching about this since, gosh, you were like 18?
I started looking at credit card rewards when I was like 18.
But then really didn't start to really get into it till like we were in grad school, like 25 or so.
Yeah. Pretty much when we first got when I knew we were about to get a real income, that's when I really started applying for a lot of cards.
So more or less the way that we do it is we will find out which cards we want to sign up for, and way back in like 2015, before we ever had a trip planned, we just go ahead and start collecting the cards and collecting the points. Now we could spend hours talking about this, so we're just going to give a brief overview of how this works. But Jared, for example, follows a few websites that give you don't have to do all the research yourself. There's some websites that will tell you, hey, these are the good deals that are out right now. For example, like we've had really good luck with our Delta Sky Miles card for airline points. So you sign up for the card, you do the initial spending requirement. It's typically something like spend $3,000 within the first 3 months of having the card, and we'll give you this lump sum amount of points all at once. This is not the same thing as you or your friend saying, yeah, I have a Delta card, and every dollar I spend on it, I get a point. So then you might, accumulate 5,000 or 10,000 points here and there over time. This is one lump sum of points. For example, the Delta card was 60,000 points all at once. So you get the most bang for your buck by doing these sign-up offers.
So that 60,000 points was enough for a round-trip flight. So it was enough for our flight from Roanoke, our small hometown airport, to Madrid, and then from Rome back to Roanoke.
Yeah.
So that 60,000, each of us were able to book our round-trip flights, which was, that's usually one of the biggest expenses of traveling. So having that taken care of is huge, and that was just one card each. So that was really helpful. You have to be, like we were talking about, you have to be more lenient when you're booking with points, though, because if you have a 1-week vacation and you have to leave on a certain day and come back on a certain day, that is not a good time to use points, because sometimes the award availability on those flights is limited. So it's much better if you have some leeway and are able to be a little more flexible.
Yeah. So that's, for example, how we were able to do flights. And we did this way in advance. We just sort of started collecting credit cards and collecting points in advance, knowing we would use them in the future. We've done similar things with other types of credit cards. For example, we had a really good success with the Hilton Honors credit cards, and we got a lot of Hilton hotel points. So on this trip in particular, we were able to cash in on, I think, 25 free hotel nights in Europe.
Which sounds ridiculous, and it is kind of ridiculous. So that one Hilton card, so when you got this Hilton card, it's the American Express Hilton Aspire card, and it had a sign-up bonus of 150,000 points, which sounds like a ton of points, and it's a lot. But Hilton it's got a huge variety in how much the nights cost for redemption. So some will be as low as $5,000 a night, and then others are as high as like $400,000 a night, which doesn't make any sense. Obviously, the more prestigious the hotel, the more expensive it is. But we found some that were really good deals in Krakow, Amsterdam, Vienna, and Bratislava. So we basically booked, and an additional perk of that card, the Aspire card, is that if you book 4 nights with reward points, you get the 5th night free. So because of that, we booked basically 4 nights in each of those cities and then got the 5th night free. So with that 150,000 points, we got like 15 or 16 free nights from that, which was really, really helpful in this trip. And then the rest of the nights were from other cards that we have. Some cards will have a perk that each year that you keep the card, you get a free night. So we used those kind of things. We used other points that we had accumulated over the years. But yeah, we ended up with 25 free nights, which made this trip cost way less than it would have otherwise.
So I think the bottom line here with this credit card churning, travel hacking type stuff is just go ahead and start. Even if you don't have a trip planned in mind, I think that if you want to get into this type of thing, go ahead and read, some of Jared's articles. There's some other websites he follows, like
there's
Points
hundreds
Guy,
of points websites these days.
Doctor of Credit. Like, there's tons of websites that you can just start reading and just apply for a card here and there, and then just bank the points, and you might use them later. You'll figure out how to use them later. But if you already have them, and then you want to take that big trip to Hawaii, or you want to take that big trip to Europe, already having some is better than, we hear so often, like, I want to take this trip to Europe in 2 months. What credit card can I sign up for? It's like, it's too late.
Or even in 6 months, because you need to, 1, get the card, earn the points, which is usually, like she said, it takes $3,000 in spending, which most people, depending on your finances, that might be a lot in 3 months, or that might be not that much in 3 months. So $3,000 in 3 months is kind of tough for us, and we have to combine our expenses to meet that. And so it might take us 2 or 2.5 months to meet that requirement, and then you need to be able to book the flights in advance. And so, if you're trying to plan a trip 6 months from now and you're just getting cards now, it's going to be really hard to do that. So yeah, I would prefer to get points in advance, basically hoard as many as I could, and then plan trips around the points that I have, like, in reason. I'm not going to go to somewhere I don't want to go to just because I have points, but pick and choose the places that you are desirable to you based on the points you have, where you can go, what airlines fly there, those kind of things.
Yeah. So if anybody is just now tuning in, we're sort of just talking about some of the various ways that we've been able to make longer term travel work. What we're working up to talking about as well is how this plays into being a travel therapist. But we'll get to that in just a little bit. But we want to talk a little bit more about just how we're able to make our trips frugal. And people ask all the time, how are you able to travel for 4 months at a time? Like, how are you able to not spend very much money? So what we've already covered is using points for flights, huge. Using points for hotels, huge. The other thing we use a lot is Airbnb. So when we're not staying in free hotel nights, we use Airbnb almost exclusively.
Yeah, and Airbnb has really changed the game as far as travel goes, especially international travel. I don't know it would have been almost impossible 20 years ago or 15 years ago to take a trip like we did. Even like 10 years ago, I think it would be really, really hard. One, planning it would be difficult because researching the places would be so tough, and trying to find buses from one place to another or flights.
If
all
we
that
didn't
would
have
be
smartphones
so difficult.
and the internet, like, this trip would not be possible.
But then in addition to that, you'd have to stay in hotels everywhere. And Airbnb has made it's made accommodations so much cheaper than it's ever been before. And I think this is like basically the golden age of traveling, because we're at a point right now where everything is so accessible. You can flights are cheap. You can fly more safely than you ever have been able to in history. Like, it's really, really rare to have airline crashes now, which is wonderful. So you can take these flights across the world, and you have you're very safe. And then you have Airbnb that keeps costs so low. So yeah, we stay a lot at Airbnb, and even in Europe, which is usually more expensive. So places like Paris, London, we stay at Airbnbs there, and we can usually find places for, at the most, $40 a night, which if we were looking for hotels in that same city would probably be $150 or $200 a night. So it's really like a fraction of the cost, which is insanely helpful. And then they have things like if you're gonna do long-term travel, the best idea is to stay in each place for about a week. One, because it slows things down a little bit and you get to rest more, because what we found is we get very tired when we're moving from place to place every 3 or 4 days, because your entire time there is packed with sightseeing and getting to and from the place. And if you have an extra few days to actually rest and relax, it really makes the trip more enjoyable. But what else is really nice about that is 7 days you get a discount on Airbnb on almost all listings. Sometimes it'll be as much as 30 or 40% off the nightly rate if you stay for a week. So Airbnb, if you can stay longer and take advantage of those week-long discounts, that is really, really helpful. You can make the travel very, very affordable.
Yeah. So we kind of covered how we save on airline, how we save on accommodations. Some other ways are just generally being frugal. So when you travel long term, you have to not think of it as much as like your 7-day vacation. When you're on a 7-day typical American vacation, you're going to want to do everything and see everything and spend all the money and do all the things, as you like to say, eat out all the time, just go all at it. It's a little different when you are traveling longer term. I think especially when it comes to food costs. So we do our best to try to only eat out at a restaurant or some type of establishment once a day. Sometimes not even once a day, just depending on how the day goes. But we definitely try not to eat out more than once a day. So we do intermittent fasting, which we've talked about before and we've done for years. So that helps because it cuts us down to 2 meals a day versus your standard 3. 1 meal a day, we try to just eat something quick or something small, something takeout, or either go to a grocery store and get something. We go to grocery stores in like every country we go to get some pre-made salads, get some sandwich stuff, whatever. And then sometimes it's a real sit-down dinner, or sometimes it's a place that you go up to the counter and you get it yourself and you sit down. And we try to keep a lot of our meals under $10 each, or 10 euros each, when possible. So we really are able to cut down food expenses that way. And then you want to talk a little bit about activities and how we keep activities cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, when you go to a city, you get the best feel for the city walking all around the city. So we do a ton of walking. In addition to what Whitney was talking about with the food costs, not only does it get expensive eating out all the time when you're traveling, but if you're traveling for 4 months and you eat out every meal, you gain a lot of weight. There's almost no way around that. So you have to try to make some of your meals more healthy. And along with that, you have to try to get a little bit more exercise, because when you go out to restaurants, they're not trying to make the food, unless you go to restaurants that specifically try to, they're not trying to make the food healthy. They're trying to make the food taste good, which means they add a lot of extra sugar and a lot of
they're not macro
oils
friendly.
And, yeah.
They're not diet friendly.
Yeah, so we gain weight when we're traveling, even though we're walking like sometimes 8, 9, 10 miles a day. So best way to see a city is walk as much as possible, and along with that you get some exercise and hopefully not gain as much weight, which is great.
Yeah. And save on transportation costs. We try to take public transportation when possible and walk when possible. We hardly ever take a taxi. Almost twice on this whole trip have we taken a taxi. So expensive. We took a couple more in Asia because they were like $2 to $5. But when they're 30 euros, we're not taking a taxi. We're going to walk 40 minutes if it takes that.
Yeah, and as far as activities too, so we look into a lot of the free things, so like museums. There's always really nice parks, and almost every big city has nice parks and a lot of times they're free museums. And
Google what's free. So we Google free things to do in blank city. Yeah. And usually it's like if they're already free museums, or there's certain nights that the museums are free. Just check into that. Free walking tours we've done a lot of.
Yeah, free walking tours are great. Those are tip based, so usually $5 or $10 each is what we end up paying for a free walking tour, but that's worth it. And then let's see, there's some things when you're traveling. I mean, I like to be frugal and I like to keep my costs as low as possible, but if I'm in Rome, I'm not going to not go to the Colosseum, right? Or if I'm in Paris, we're not going to skip the Louvre. So there's some costs that you're going to have, right? So you have to just be flexible on that and realize that even if you're trying to be frugal, why skip the things that you might never go back to? Like the big things that are tourist attractions, we're still going to go to those. And so we still spent a decent amount of money on that. But besides those things, there's a lot of little things that people will do that might not really provide that much value, that end up costing, a decent amount, that you can probably, hop on, hop off buses. That's one of the things that people like to do in cities. And those are great, but they cost a lot of money, or not a lot, but they cost more than walking around the city. And you can see a lot of the city by walking or taking public transportation. So we skip those kind of things, the kind of things that we don't really see bring us value.
Yeah.
But we're still going to all the major things that we really want to see.
Yeah.
So real quick, Jonathan asked about.
Well, I wanted to get into Jonathan's question. I saw Jonathan ask the question, but just to recap real quick, what we've talked about so far is more or less how we keep expenses low. So this can apply to anyone. Keeping expenses low as far as credit card, rewards, accommodations, food, attractions, all that kind of stuff. So next I want to move into talking a little bit more specifically about how we are able to take this time off, because that's people's biggest thing. Most standard Americans that are working standard jobs are not able to take off long periods of time. But if you're watching this and you are a therapist who is aspiring to be a travel therapist, or you're a current travel therapist, we are in a very unique situation to be able to take this additional time off.
All right, so Jonathan, we're going to get to that question. I guess this does tie well into that. So
yeah, so
we'll
Jonathan, I want to just sort of lead into this a little bit. Jonathan's question was, how do you keep up with medical insurance? But we're going to talk about that as part of what it is to be a travel therapist and what it is to take longer periods off.
Yeah, so the reason we're able to do this at all is because we are travel therapists, obviously. We make videos about it, we write articles about it, and we have been traveling for 4.5 years. So as a travel therapist, we make more money on our contracts, and we have, when a contract ends, we basically have unlimited time off as long as we're able to afford to take that time off. So when we first started, we worked as much as possible to try to save as much as possible. We took as high paying contracts as we could get. We worked as many weeks per year as we could. We saved a lot. And then once we had saved a lot and had like basically a foundation of, a little bit of financial stability, then we decided that we were going to just take 6 months or so off per year from that point on. And that's what we've been doing the last 2 years. And so basically, the extra money and the flexibility with time off is how we're able to do this. So we might work 6 months per year, take 6 months off. During that 6 months, maybe we travel for 4 or 5, and then maybe we spend a month or 2 at home with family. So that's worked out really well, and we plan to continue doing that. Maybe even scaling the work back a little bit more to maybe 3 months per year. But as a travel therapist, it's possible to do that, and there's very few other professions in the world, I would say, or in the U.S., that you're able to take so much time off. And we talk to tons of people who are traveling that only have 2 or 3 weeks of vacation. So you can't do a trip like this. You can't do a really long extended trip where you can actually kind of keep your costs a little lower because you're traveling for so long, like I was talking about. Within Europe, costs are cheap, but from place to place. Whereas if we went from the U.S. to Spain, and then the U.S. to Portugal, and then the U.S. to France, and then the U.S., and we did all that, this trip would cost 20 times as much probably, compared to what it actually did.
Yeah.
So those short trips add up. They're very expensive. The longer trips, where the cost is spread out over time, are a lot cheaper. And I think that is a massive perk of being a travel therapist. So we're able to take very long trips, we're able to save more money, and take a long stretch of time off.
Yeah. So if you're watching this right now, we'd love to hear who is on. If you're a current travel therapist, or if you're someone who's aspiring to be a travel therapist later, we'd love if you'd leave us a comment and let us know. But hopefully at this point, if you are watching, you have some idea of the concept of the fact that you are a contractor as a travel therapist. You are in a very unique situation to be able to design your own schedule. But it does require you to make certain life choices to be frugal. We really encourage therapists that we hear from students and like new travel therapists all the time, like, oh, you're living, the life that I want to live. I can't wait to travel the world. I want to take more time off. But we encourage you to save up a nest egg. So we really encourage you to work at least a year, if not 2 to 3 years solid, to really build up enough money to put aside to feel comfortable to do this lifestyle that we're doing. So we worked 3 years nonstop that way, and then start taking more time off. But other than that, you are in the driver's seat. You don't have a recruiter or a company or whatever telling you when you have to work. You can just work when you want to and not work when you don't want to. But it requires you to be frugal. So during those year, 2 years, 3 years that you're gonna work and you're gonna save up a lot of money, you need to keep your expenses low. So we lived in a camper for a little while, for about 2.5 years, and that's one way we were able to keep our expenses low. We also just were very frugal throughout that time, and we saved a significant portion of our income. So we stayed within our home state and the surrounding states for the majority of our contracts. One contract we went a few states away to Massachusetts from our home state of Virginia. But other than that, we didn't make a lot of huge moves, and we didn't take a lot of time off. We worked back-to-back contracts.
That was strategic to try to save as much as we could, try to stay in low-cost areas where even though the pay is not insanely high like it might be in California, we can keep our cost of living very low.
Yeah.
So that helps you save. I mean, there's two sides of that equation. You can make as much as possible, or you can spend as little as possible, right? And in California, you're going to make more, but you're going to spend more. And the East Coast, you make less, but you spend less, which is great.
So it all depends on how you want to design your life. If you are getting into travel therapy because you really just want to see, your bucket list is to go live in Hawaii and go live in Alaska and go live in California and go live in Texas and go live in Maine, you can do it that way. But the more you jump around and the more you go to highly desirable, high cost of living areas, the closer your income to your expenses are going to be. Whereas us, we went to some rural places in Virginia and North Carolina and Massachusetts. Well, not really rural in Massachusetts, but maybe less desirable places. And we had made a huge gap between our income and our expenses, and we saved all that extra money. So you just have to keep that in mind if you're going to plan to be the type of travel therapist that hops around a lot around the country and takes, for example, if you do a job in New York and then you do your next one in Arizona and then you do your next one in Alaska, you have to take a week or so off in between contracts where you're not making money. You have to pay moving expenses to move there, all these things that go into it. And if you are just dead set on going to San Francisco or San Diego, your housing is going to be $2,000 a month. So you have to take into account being frugal if what you want to do is the lifestyle that we've done and take additional time off. There's so many ways that go into this to be frugal, but these are just some things that we want to let you know how we were able to do this, and some things we would encourage you to consider if you also want to take 3 to 6 months off at a time. So that's a little bit about taking additional time off. Now let's address the question. I think it was Jonathan asked.
He's probably left by now, but
I know.
How do you take so much time off and still keep medical insurance? So what we do, if we're going to take a short time off, so for our first 3.5 years of traveling, all we did was take the company-provided health insurance, and then between contracts, we would use COBRA to cover that gap if we needed it. And I've talked about this in the past, but the great thing about COBRA is that you only have to pay for it if you need it. So say we had 2 weeks off, and we were switching companies in between that 2 weeks. So say we took a contract with company A, and then after 2 weeks we're going to be going with company B. In that 2 week gap, if we had any issue come up, we can then pay for COBRA, and COBRA will retroactively cover that expense, which is wonderful, because then if that 2 weeks goes by and you don't need anything, nothing happens, you don't have to go, no prescriptions, whatever, then you just don't worry about it, and that 2 week gap was fine. But if something does come up, say, I don't know, something bad happens. I don't want to say anything specifically, but say something bad happens, and then you need it, then you pay for it, and it covers it. So that's great. If you're taking more than probably 3 or 4 weeks off, though, that won't work. So what we did is, after this last contract we finished in beginning of May, we signed up for the Marketplace plan, which is through the Affordable Care Act Marketplace. And basically, since we're a travel therapist and I worked 10 weeks this year, beginning of the year so far. We'll probably work more at the end of the year, but that 10 weeks, my income is low. So because of that, I am eligible for subsidies for the Affordable Care Act plans, which means that we sign up through the Marketplace. Our plans are pretty affordable, and then we have coverage while we're gone. We also get travel insurance while we're gone in case something major happens while we're out of the country. But that's what we did. We signed up for health insurance through the Marketplace. We used the subsidies available while we're not working to help offset some of that cost, and it ends up being pretty affordable. Yeah.
And one more thing in addition to that, if you are planning on taking off 2 to 3 weeks between jobs, which is more typical, I think not a lot of travel therapists take off 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 months like we have. I'd say more often travel therapists take off 2 to 3 to 4 weeks. If you take your next job with the same company, typically your insurance will carry over during that time, Jonathan. So if you had your same company, you took a job and it ended on June 1st, and you went ahead and were like, oh yeah, I'm going to sign up for a new contract with you guys starting on June 26th, but for the 3 weeks between there, I'm going to take off. As long as you take that next job, it's usually within 30 days, sometimes it's within 21 days, it just depends on the company. Your insurance will carry over with that company, and there's no problem there. But usually if it's more than 30 days, or if you take your next contract with a different company, then your insurance does not carry over.
True.
So that's something to keep in mind, and I would say that's more typical of what travelers experience.
Yeah, and if you're going to take those long periods of time off, I think as a travel therapist, already with a lower adjusted gross income since some of the income's from stipends, and then in addition to that, if you're taking long periods of time off, you're obviously not working the whole year, so you're already going to have further reduced income. The Affordable Care Act is great because we especially if you're contributing to retirement plans too, because our income is so low that the subsidies are pretty high for us, which is really helpful. It makes health insurance really affordable.
Yeah. So what he's talking about is when you get your own independent insurance, not with the company, you have to sign up through the Affordable Care Act Marketplace website.
You don't have to. You can go through third parties, but I think it's better for most travelers to go through.
The majority of the time you would. So it's based, the amount you pay each month, your premium, is based on your income. So like Jared said, he only worked 10 weeks. I think I worked 12 weeks this year. So right now, our income for the entire year is just 10 to 12 weeks worth of income. So it looks like on paper we didn't make very much money. I mean, we didn't make very much money for the entire year.
Not just on paper, we actually.
But I mean, for the entire year, that's what they're considering your income is just for that year. That's how much income you made. So your insurance is really cheap versus if you worked a full year and you had a lot of income.
Yeah.
So that's what that's all about. But this is the first time we ever had to do that. Last year we actually didn't sign up for insurance. We just because we were out of the country for like 5 months, and we just used the travel insurance. And then when we got back, we thought we were going to start a job, and then we would just take the company insurance, but then we ended up not starting a job, so then we ended up not having insurance for a little while, and that was kind of stupid, but we learned this time.
And last year too, another big downside of last year, which you don't have to worry about this anymore, but if you had an extended gap in your medical insurance last year and prior under the Affordable Care Act, you had to pay a penalty. So this past year I paid, I think it was like a $400 penalty on my taxes for not having health insurance, which wasn't ideal, it wasn't great. But this year, and from this point on, they changed the requirements, and you don't have to pay that penalty anymore. So we could have gone without health insurance, but if it's already only a couple $100s a month, then I feel more comfortable having it, and peace of mind is nice. So
yeah.
Kiara said that in the French Riviera she walked and biked a lot and actually lost weight. I'm really jealous of that because I think I probably gained about 15 pounds this trip, which is kind of.
I haven't weighed myself, but
And Whitney she's still a little upset in terms of biking, so she's probably sad.
We're not going to talk about that. I blanked that out. I saw that word and it just blanked it out. Me and bikes don't go together.
Bikes are dead to her, so.
Yeah. So we are going to do just like a quick overview of all the nonsense we just talked about and kind of some different things. So if you guys are watching right now and you have questions that we didn't address, if you wanted to ask them in the comments. If you've learned anything from this video or enjoyed hearing us talk, we would love if you would hit the like button, give us a thumbs up or a heart. And again, ask any questions that you have. So just to kind of recap what we talked about, we traveled around Europe for 15 weeks, and I can't believe it's over. We're leaving in the morning.
Yeah. In some ways, it feels like it was just yesterday we left, and in other ways, it feels like we have been gone for years. It's kind of weird.
It's weird when you're gone for a while. So we've been gone since May. We traveled for 15 and a half weeks all around Europe. We went to 14 different countries. Of those countries, our favorites, a lot of people ask us this, our favorites were Portugal and Croatia.
Southern Portugal and the coast of Croatia are amazing. And then the third would probably be Bruges in Belgium is really, really nice too.
But there was also so many places in Eastern Europe. We loved Krakow, we liked Bratislava, we loved Prague. Italy's been nice, except for Rome's public transport.
It's so hard to say a favorite too, because it depends on what you're looking for. Like in terms of things to see, Rome is amazing. I can't believe like the Colosseum, the Pantheon, is what it is, right?
The Pantheon.
Pantheon, the Vatican, St. Peter Basilica. Man, those are amazing places. So in terms of like things to see, Rome is by far the best place we've ever been. But in terms of like places that we could actually see ourselves like staying longer, like a month or 2 months or 3 months.
Yeah.
Southern Portugal and the coast of Croatia are both really awesome.
Incredible.
And if you've never been to those places,
cool cities to visit for a couple of days. Obviously, Paris was super cool. Amsterdam was super cool.
Yep. Vienna, Budapest,
Prague. There are so many cool places. So anyway, we went to 14 different countries. We are writing slowly some blog posts about it, so eventually you'll see some blog posts about it, but we're a little bit behind.
On the other website, Fifth Wheel PT is where we're writing about what we did and about also my expenses. I've been keeping track of that, which, so I guess I might as well mention, for 4 months, I think my total expenses are probably going to be somewhere around $5,000 or maybe a little bit over $5,000 just for my expenses. So like we were talking about, those award flights and award hotels and all that stuff really made a huge difference. So, most people, if you think about spending 4 months in Europe, especially Western Europe, that's expensive. Like, if we were going through Eastern Europe, it might not be that bad, but Western Europe normally costs a lot of money. But we were able to keep our costs pretty low, which was pretty nice.
And I don't really track my expenses, but my expenses aren't that much more than his because our main flights, hotels, that kind of stuff, like the big ticket items are all the exact same cost. The only difference in cost for like things that I spend might be, maybe I bought a dress here or there and Jared didn't buy any dresses. And maybe I bought an extra glass of wine.
You don't know that I didn't buy any dresses.
You certainly didn't buy any of my dresses for me.
Yeah.
Whatever. I had to buy my own dresses. Anyway, maybe I bought a little extra wine or I bought the more expensive entree. So it's just small things here and there that make my expenses more than Jared's. But in general, like, if I tracked my expenses, it wouldn't be that much more.
Yeah, so if you're interested in where we actually went, how much we actually spent in each place, what we did in each place, go to the Fifth Wheel PT website. And we will slowly get everything posted, but we already have the first, probably half or a little bit over half of the trip we've written about.
Yeah, and I'll still be posting pictures, some of my 12,000 pictures we've taken for like the next year on my Facebook. So anyway, just to kind of I see we get a couple questions coming in, we'll answer those, but just to sort of continue our recap, we went for 15 weeks, 14 countries, all through Europe. We spent very little money. We used a lot of credit card points.
Not very little, but comparatively little. A lot of people spend like $5,000 for like a 10-day trip to Europe. So we spent very little money. We saved up a lot from being travel therapists. We're able to take additional time off from being travel therapists. We use a lot of credit card rewards and airline points and hotel points, and we use Airbnb. And we do grocery shop in other countries, and we do cook sometimes. We walk so much. How many miles did you say we've walked on this trip? I looked this up the other day. I tried to add.
Looked it up like on our app, our health app.
So I didn't add every day, but I tried to take the average of each month while we were gone, and try to determine how many steps we took on this trip. And I think it's somewhere around 1.7 million steps that we took in the last 101 days. So. It's a lot of walking.
We've walked a lot.
We
take a lot of public transport, which sometimes is a real headache, but most of the time it's okay.
Most of the time it's really good.
Rome
is not good.
We don't take Uber. We don't take taxis. Most of the time everything works out pretty great. We've had a few faux pas here and there. Most of our Airbnbs were incredible. We met some really cool hosts. We had a couple that kind of sucked, but we've never felt dangerous. We've never, knock on wood, we've never gotten robbed or, injured or anything like that. We have gotten sick a couple of times. On this trip, I only got sick one time.
I didn't get sick at all on this trip.
I got sick at all. I got some kind of, food virus or something, and I was vomiting in Amsterdam. Last year in Asia, we got sick a few times, but, there's...
Cuisine is a lot different.
Yeah, cuisine's a lot different, and the bacteria in the water and all that stuff. So for the most part, we've been pretty fortunate in our travels and done pretty well overall.
Yeah, and one thing to mention is on a long trip like this, everyone from the outside, it seems like it's amazing, and it is amazing. But there are certainly times when you're really tired and you don't want to go on a bus and you don't want to get up early to go to go to the airport, and stuff happens like today where it's supposed to take 45 minutes to get somewhere and it takes over 2 hours, and you're really frustrated. that
The bus
is
never
definitely going to happen.
comes.
That is definitely going to happen. There's no one that's going to take a 4-month trip with a bunch of moves and not have issues come up. So if you do a trip like this, you just have to look at it as an adventure. So
Yeah.
most of the time today, while we're waiting on the buses for 30 to 40 minutes, you just make jokes out of it because you can't do anything. There's no point in being upset about it. So that stuff's going to happen. You just have to roll with the punches.
Or sometimes you get to your Airbnb and they say, we don't have AC in Europe because we don't need it, but then it's 105 degrees and then you don't have AC and then you're dying and then you're having a panic attack because it's so hot, but most of the time it's fine.
Yep.
And then sometimes you use hotel points and you get to stay at 5-star hotels and you show up with your like backpack on.
Yeah, I guess.
And you like pretend that you're fancy, but you're not because you're a
Yeah.
backpacker.
We always feel really out of place, especially yesterday. We were at the Waldorf Astoria in Rome, which was hella fancy. And this morning, actually, this was pretty neat. We didn't know what Turkish baths were or Roman baths. And this hotel had the Turkish bath and the Roman bath, which basically a Roman bath, I think, is just like basically it was like a hot tub or a jacuzzi.
More or less that's what they were calling it, unless they were just calling it that because we were in Rome. It was basically a jacuzzi. But
And then the Turkish bath was like a wet sauna. No, it's like a steam room. Yeah, I guess like a steam room with a really cold pool in the middle. So then I guess you stand in the really hot sauna or the steam room until you can't stand it, and then you get in this freezing cold water. It's like a contrast thing, which was actually really awesome. But that's the kind of stuff we experience.
anyway,
in
sometimes you
hotels.
have amazing experiences and fun stories, and sometimes there's little bumps along the road. But for the most part, it's been amazing. And we just want to say also that we really appreciate you guys that have been following us. I know that some of you follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and we've gotten messages from you guys, and it's been a lot of fun. And we hope that all of you guys that are following us and want to do this type of thing get your opportunity to do it as well.
Yep.
But it's been an amazing experience. And, if you are a therapist and you have the opportunity to be a travel therapist like we are, there are ways that you can arrange your lifestyle to do the similar things to what we've done. And even if it's not taking 4 months, 3 to 4 months off, you could even take a 2 or 3 or 4 week vacation that most of your peers and family and friends would not be able to do otherwise. So we have a lot of things available to us as travel therapists. So we're going to cover a couple questions that are coming through. Okay.
All right, so tax home wise, y'all are going to go home for a bit now, and that will meet the requirement for needing to spend a certain amount of time at home. Yeah, so as far as my understanding goes, and I'm definitely not an expert on this, let's say that you're going to take a month off traveling, or to travel internationally like we have, right? So just a month, and the rest of the year you're planning on working different travel assignments. That month, if you leave your travel assignment, so say your assignment ends, you go home, and then you leave from home on the trip, and then you go back home, and then you go to your next assignment, and you're actually out of the country for a month. My understanding is that since you weren't working during that time, and you went home during that time, even though that you went on a vacation between those assignments, that should still count as time at home, right? So based on the tax professionals that I've talked to, that's how they explained it to me. But yeah, we've only worked very little this year, so we don't have any issues with tax home, getting enough time at home. We have plenty of time at home.
Yeah.
But definitely, if you're interested in doing something like this, maybe taking a month off and having that be like all travel, check with a tax professional and make sure that that's correct, because that's just, that's my interpretation or what I've heard.
Yes, we're not totally sure about that. So, yeah, I would check with someone else to be sure. But that's our interpretation. But for our particular situation, we were at home from Christmas until March. So we were home for like 3 months. And then when we get back home, we'll be home for a lot of time. So
a couple more months.
this year, tax home things are not even a concern for us because we're kind of home all the time. Like we only worked 10 weeks this year. But yeah. Okay, Jeff says, hi, I hope we get to see you guys when you come back to Virginia and they start work next week. So
That's
exciting, awesome. Jeff. Yes, I hope that we get to see you and Megan as well. Our friends Jeff and Megan just accepted their very first travel contract in our home state of Virginia, so that's super exciting. I think you guys will be like 3 or 4 hours from us at home though, but hopefully we'll get to see you.
Yep.
Can't wait to hear how that
We're
goes.
actually going to Norfolk.
Yeah, but that's not anywhere near them.
That's not near them? Okay.
No. They're in Northern Virginia.
Okay.
Whole other state.
Not another state.
You know what I mean.
Yeah, it's a long way.
Nova is basically another state.
Okay.
Okay, Lena says we are about to do the thing, ending our perm jobs in a few weeks, and you.
That was sassy.
Well, it was
Good
sassy.
gosh.
They're about to do the thing. They're about to probably do all of the things.
Okay.
Anyway, so Lena, that's super exciting, and she says you two have been an inspiration. We are so happy that we could help, and we just hope that you have a great adventure.
Yep.
And that your first job goes well as well.
Yep. Just stick with the good times and the bad times. There's always going to be tough times, no matter what you do in life in general. But
So
especially,
inspirational.
well, especially in traveling, travel therapy and traveling internationally, you're going to have rough times, and you're going to have times where you're like, man, why did I do this? That's completely
Yeah, it's
normal.
gonna happen.
But you have to realize that the big picture, it's pretty awesome. It's a cool lifestyle. It's
Yeah.
a lot of adventure, and we've really enjoyed it.
I mean, there's been some times when we were on contract as travel therapists that were like, oh my gosh, I hate this sniff, and I hate this manager, and I hate the, oh my gosh, our camper broke down on the way to this assignment, and this is stupid, and yada yada. But the big picture is we have a super flexible lifestyle. We've been able to earn a really good income and be able to save a significant amount of our income. And we took 5 months off last year and traveled around the world. We took 4 months off this year and are traveling around Europe. And when we get back, we're taking a sweet road trip out to Vegas to meet some other travel therapists and people in our industry, which is going to be a great time. And it's just a wonderful lifestyle. So we are super excited for you, Lena, and for you, Jeff, and for anyone else who's watching that's getting ready to jump into your own travel therapy journey. We're excited for you guys as well.
Yep. And if you guys ever need help, definitely feel free to reach out. We love talking to other travelers, trying to help with problems or whatever.
Yeah.
So this was a way too long video, again, always. And we thought that this was going to be a short video where we have to get up in probably 7 hours.
Yeah, we need to go to sleep because tomorrow we have to fly back to the U.S. with all you guys. So if you guys enjoyed this video, we would love if you would just give us a thumbs up. If you're watching now or later, leave us a comment and say hi. If you have questions, you can leave the questions in the comments, or you can send us a message. And we'd be happy to help you as far as travel hacking or travel therapy. If you guys need to get set up with travel therapy companies and recruiters and that sort of thing, we can help you with that as well.
Yep, and like I mentioned, if you guys are interested in learning more about the trip or more about my expenses, I kept track of all the expenses from our last trip, the 5-month trip, on the Fifth Wheel PT website, and slowly we're writing about all the expenses on this trip. So I find that stuff interesting. Like if I find other websites where they write about their expenses, I think that's interesting, but also I'm weird. So if that's something you're interested in, check out that website, some of the articles there. Also, travel hacking, credit card rewards, all that stuff we talked about. I've written quite a bit about that on the Fifth Wheel PT website, so if you're interested in that, check out that website, and also you can send us messages if you need help with anything.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining tonight, and we'll talk to you next time.
Yep, see you later.
Bye.